Disclaimer, I am not a licensed medical professional. This podcast is not intended to replace real medical support from a mental health professional or other licensed medical practitioner. If you are in crisis and need immediate support, call 911 or reach out to Suicide Prevention Hotline at 988.
Hello, and welcome to Dare2Talk, where we strive to bring some positivity to your day. I'm Dare. Let's talk. I'm going to invite you to join me in a mindful moment. We are going to take 3 deep breaths in through our nose and out through our mouths. I'm going to invite you to get into a comfortable position, whatever that looks like or feels like for you. And so that we can really focus on that diaphragmatic breathing and drawing that breath into our belly's cavities and our belly breathing, I'm going to invite you also to put a hand on your chest and a hand on your abdomen so that you can feel your stomach rise with your breath and focus on trying to keep that chest relatively still while letting your belly rise with that filled up air. I will invite you to close your eyes, get into a comfortable position, sitting, standing. Laying down is probably the best for diaphragmatic breathing, but whatever is feeling comfortable for you. All right, let's get into our position. Hand on our chest, hand on our belly. Close our eyes and breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And out. Breathe in. And out. All right, open your eyes. Thank you for joining me in this mindful moment. And thank you for joining me today in Dare to Talk. I had a podcast planned for today where I was going to talk about coping skills and coping strategies and when those coping strategies might become unhealthy. That discussion is actually going to have to go on hold for about a week. I started on that blog post. I started on that podcast post and that podcast script for that episode. But this week has been a little bit of a rough symptom week for me, and I needed to pivot from what I was thinking I was going to do and do something else. So, for those of you who can see me on video, hi, yes, I am shaking. For those of you who cannot see me on video, I am having a little bit of a pseudo seizure. I'm having a flare up of my functional movement disorder, depending on what doctor you talk to. It's either functional movement disorder or pseudo seizures. And this has been happening for about 48 hours now. Have been doing stuff to try to kind of get it to stop and calm down. Nothing that I typically works for me is working. It's just kind of doing its thing. And this is a small pseudoseizure. It's been small pseudoseizures for the last 48 hours, in varying kind of degrees of intensity, but it doesn't get much more intense than this in this last 48 hours. There have been other pseudoseizures that I have that have been much, much, much worse. They can get much, much, much worse. And if they do get worse, I tend to start lose. I'll be able to English today. I do tend to start losing the ability to speak and my motor skills, my ability to move, and other cognitive things like reasoning and like the ability to hold on to memories. I do have a little bit of short term memory loss in those times sometimes. So these are called, like I said, these are called pseudoseizures, or functional movement disorder. I maintain awareness. Obviously, I'm talking, I'm having awareness, I'm awake, I am semi functional. And I do have some level of control. So, like, I can move my arm around even though it is shaking. I can look in different directions with my head even though it's shaking. I have movement. I have the ability to keep talking and keep reasoning to a certain extent. I do have awareness, and that's probably the thing that has saved me from having to give up my driver's license is the fact that I maintain awareness. And it has been what has allowed me to be able to do at least some kind of working and things like that, because I do maintain awareness. And I get really, really strong auras before these start happening as well. I get a sense of something's coming. I get jittery. I can feel my muscles start to kind of shake before they become visible. And so I get aware auras, I get warnings that these are about to happen, but this has been something that I have been dealing with since January of 2025. This is actually the symptom that sent me to the hospital in the first place to get my diagnosis of Balo's concentric sclerosis, is these pseudo seizures that I get. And like I said, sometimes they get really, really bad. I can sometimes get them to stop on my own or with the help of um, medicinal substances, but other times I cannot get them to stop on my own and need to seek out medical intervention depending on how long it lasts, how severe it gets, if I feel like I'm at risk of certain things. There's not a whole lot that the doctors have been able to do for me to get these to stop whenever I've needed them to stop. They've tried to put me on um, anti-seizure medications. That hasn't worked. Certain other medications have given me really weird hallucinations of like little gnomes running around with needles poking me. It was not a fun time. Um, and so I tend to try to avoid going to the hospital for these unless absolutely necessary. If it gets very, very bad, I will go to a hospital. I've been admitted a couple of times for these. I've had EEGs, I think EEGs, I don't know. I've had some studies done to make sure that these are not epileptic and that I don't have epilepsy going on, and they are not epileptic. They are very much just kind of a muscle kind of spasm. My mom explains them because my mom gets these as well sometimes. And she explains them like your body is having a really intense panic attack. It happens when I get really, really stressed out, happens when I get really, really fatigued, happens if I am pushing a little bit too hard in certain areas of my life. And I haven't figured out all of my triggers yet. But I do know that working is one of my triggers. And this is why I don't really work in a traditional job anymore. So I am a little bit of a workaholic. I'll be honest. I am a little bit of a workaholic. I don't like being a housewife. And I say that with the utmost respect for people who are housewives, for people who do want to be housewives or house husbands. I have the utmost respect for you guys, for sure. It is not easy. It is not a task that they have taken on very lightly. It is a lot more work than what people give you guys credit for. I have the utmost respect for homemakers of our society. That is something that I have not had an interest in really doing for a while. I tried to be a housewife in Guam when I was living with my ex husband in Guam, and I got really bored. Granted, I didn't have kids. I still don't have kids. I only had the dogs, and I had a small house and not a whole lot that I needed to maintain. But I was so bored. And that's part of what brought me back to college and why I started going to college again. And then now I have tried to work. These pseudo seizures have prevented me from being able to work in the areas that I want to work in. And so I am more or less a housewife right now with my current partner. And I wanted something more to do, which is why I have been working on trying to find something that I can do that isn't going to set off my pseudo seizures super, super significantly, that I will be able to set my own schedule for, that I can take time if I need to kind of relax with. And that's where this blogging and this podcasting and all of that has come into play. Um, this is the first kind of major pseudo seizure that I have started having since trying to do this podcast. So that is both a blessing and a little bit of a curse, because now it means that I am probably going to be a little bit more likely to have pseudo seizures in the past or in the future. And I definitely am going to need to figure out how I'm going to work around these. Um, but a lot of people who have multiple sclerosis have been able to keep working and have been able to hold on to their jobs. I know of 2 teachers in the school I was working at in Alaska who had diagnoses of multiple sclerosis who were teaching and who were still able to be functional. And I find myself comparing myself sometimes to the people with multiple sclerosis who are working and feeling this feeling of inadequacy, that I am not working and that I am not holding down a job very well and that I'm not teaching. And one of the things that I'm really having to struggle with mental health wise and just kind of in general and life wise is recognizing that everybody's struggle, everybody's journey is different. Not everybody is going to have the same experiences. Not everybody is going to have the same challenges. And not everybody is going to be able to deal with their symptoms the same as other people. What works for some isn't going to work for others. And I know that there are teachers in the world with multiple sclerosis who are working. And I know that there are healthcare professionals and other professionals who are working high labor, high intensive jobs with multiple sclerosis that are still able to function. I am not one of those people who's going to be able to keep working with multiple sclerosis because of the symptoms that I have and the way that my symptoms are working against me to be able to maintain a job in tandem with my own mental health state and my own struggles with borderline personality disorder and all of the other kind of things that I'm having to deal with that are physical symptoms and other that are preventing me from being able to be successful in any position that I try to go into. And that has been really, really difficult for me because, like I said, I don't really like being a housewife. I don't like sitting at home not working. And as much as I love this blog and as much as I love this podcast, sometimes I'm a little bit afraid that my symptoms are going to take this away from me. And I'm going to try really, really, really hard not to let that happen. I am a very, very hard worker. I'm going to push through and keep doing things until my body makes it absolutely impossible for me to do it. But I do get a little bit of anxiety sometimes that this isn't going to be something I'm going to be able to maintain because of pseudo seizures and because of other things that are difficult. I know with my blog post, typing sometimes can be a challenge. Even if I am just trying to like type out a couple of sentences. I know that whenever my symptoms flare really, really badly, my typing is one of the things that gets very significantly affected. And I will try to do speech to text, but I don't have the funds to get the dictation stuff that I really want. And other dictation programs aren't quite up to the level that I want them to be at, and trying to figure out how to work with them can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. I've done a few blog posts in the past using dictation devices and it was challenging. It was very, very challenging. And what gets really challenging too is that when I'm having pseudo seizures and when I'm having really bad symptoms, like I've mentioned before, one of the things that is affected for me is speech, especially if my pseudo seizures are more intense than I'm having right now. My speech goes away a little bit. I struggle some days It makes grocery shopping with my partner very interesting when my speech is being affected, because he doesn't make the menu with me. He doesn't make the shopping list with me. And then he'll grill me on questions about what we're putting in the cart. And I can't always keep up with those conversations. I lose words, easy words that I should be able to say. I lose them. I don't always know what I'm trying to say. I get stuck on sentences and repeat words like a broken record, and I can't get the next word that I want to say out, and it just causes a lot of frustration. And so whenever I'm having bad symptoms that are affecting my typing, they're very often also affecting my speech. And so I will try to use dictation, but then I can't vocalize what I'm wanting to say, and I can't type what I'm wanting to say without some effort. And so that is a concern that I have with moving forward with the blog and the podcast, is finding workarounds for days when I just literally cannot, on any way, shape, or form, get the words out through anything. And so I'm working on finding these workarounds. This isn't going to stop me from keeping doing this. And part of the reason it's not going to stop me from keeping up with these blogs and these podcasts is because I'm very passionate about this. This is something that I feel like people need in their lives. I feel like people need to know that if you have a chronic illness, you are not alone. And you need to know that if you have mental health illnesses, like me with my borderline personality disorder, you're not alone. And there are going to be challenging days for sure. We're going to have our challenging days. And there are going to be days where we just kind of want to give up and we want to quit and we want to just walk away and say, ugh, this is too much. And you're not alone on that. But you can push through and you can find a way. I know that that's not always something that people want to hear. I know that there are times where people will try to be positive with me, and I get very upset and very angry and very disgruntled, because there are days where I know that I feel absolutely hopeless. I feel like I'm not going to have success in my life because my symptoms are flaring up so much. And I feel like I'm not going to get out of this position that I'm in of not having any money and not having a means to be able to make money and just struggling day to day, and I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I get really upset and angry with people who try to tell me that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that it will be okay. And if you're in one of those places where you don't want to hear the positive talk and you don't want to hear that it gets better, I feel you. I have been there with you. I understand. I get it. But I do still have to tell you that it gets better, and that taking a moment to be angry and to grieve and to have your upset times is okay. You can be in your feels for a little bit and you can process those emotions. In fact, it's good that you take some time to process those emotions. But after you've given yourself a reasonable amount of time to be upset, pull yourself up, because it will get better, and find a way to move forward because it will get better. I don't always want to hear that. I struggle hearing that sometimes, but it is the truth. And I hope that you guys can recognize that and know that it's okay.
It is time for a terrible dare joke. Why don't trains ever get angry? Because they're always blowing off steam. Uh-huh. No. Okay. Well, if you have a joke that you want to be considered for terrible dare jokes, leave it in the comments or email me at dare2talk@gmail.com. It'll be in the description, and I will see you on the next episode for another terrible dare joke.
So that's something that I have struggled with a lot in this last year, especially around my pseudo seizures. And I'm probably going to struggle with it a little bit over these next few days, is this recognition that these pseudo seizures they're lasting. This has been 48 hours of this shaking. They're not stopping. I have done my typical normal stuff to get them to stop. It's not stopping. And it's going to cause a lot of frustration for me. I do know and recognize that I am going to get frustrated because it is starting to affect my mobility right now. I'm back to using my cane. I hate using my cane, and I'm back to using my cane. I'm not quite down to my walker yet, but I do have one on standby because of the symptoms that I get after I get my pseudo seizures. I'm already starting to recognize that speech is getting affected. I've tried really, really hard in this episode to be very mindful about my speech, about what I'm saying, about being clear in what I'm saying. It's very difficult. I do feel a little bit like I'm having to slow down talking, and I'm taking a little bit of pauses every once in a while because I can tell that my speech is being affected. I already had one speech blunder early in the episode. I don't know that I'm going to edit it out because I want you guys to hear the authenticity. But speech is something that is getting affected right now. My cognitive function is getting affected right now. I'm getting fatigued. My muscles are getting fatigued. I'm getting tired. I'm getting a headache. My muscles are starting to ache in my neck, in my arms, in my legs. I'm going to be frustrated, and I'm going to be feeling a little bit defeated. And I am also going to be struggling not to beat myself up over the fact that I couldn't get the blog post that I really wanted to get out, and I couldn't get the podcast that I really wanted to get out because this has affected it. It's stopped my ability to really function. It's stopped my ability to really think, and it's stopped my ability to be able to type very effectively. You can't type very well whenever your arm is shaking and your head is going back and forth and you can't focus on what you're writing. It's difficult. And so that's a frustration that I'm going to have to contend with. I'm also feeling a little bit frustrated and defeated because I tried to do my weekly video game stream on Twitch yesterday and had to get off my stream about an hour early because I started having the pseudo seizure, started trying to push through it, got a really bad headache, got fuzzy, it was getting worse. I had to call it, I had to go. And so that's a frustration that I'm going to have to contend with. But just because is hard, and just because that I'm having these symptoms doesn't necessarily mean that I have to give up on this. And it doesn't mean that this is going to be the end for me. It doesn't mean that I have made mistakes or that this is useless or that I am going to not be able to work or all this other stuff. And I know that when I get off of this blog post or see, speech. I know that when I get off of this podcast, when I step away, whenever I get this posted up, that I'm going to go and I'm probably going to have a really good cry because I'm going to feel really, really frustrated. And I'm scared. I'm definitely going to be scared that I'm sharing this with you guys, that I'm showing you guys that these are something that I'm having to deal with and that I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable. But I know I'm going to go, I'm going to have a good cry, I'm going to deal with my frustration. It's going to be okay. And I'm going to have to know that it's going to be okay. And I'm going to have to know that I'll be able to come back and that next week I will have had more time to get the podcast that I really want written and scripted out the way that I want it, and that I will probably have had the time to record it, and I'll be able to release this really great product. I'm hoping that you guys are going to see that this is me allowing myself to be vulnerable for you guys, and that you guys are going to recognize that it's okay to allow yourselves to be vulnerable every once in a while as well. And to talk about your own struggles, talk about how you're feeling, talk about how you are really experiencing the hardships, talk about the things that make you frustrated, and express that it's okay to not be okay. I end every single one of these episodes with I dare you to talk about how you're really feeling today. And the reason that I do that is because when we go to the store or when we go to a restaurant, or when we go out in public and we meet with people and we see people, or when we go to our jobs and we get greeted in our jobs, everybody always goes, "Oh, hey, how are you? How was your day today?" And the immediate polite response is always to say, "Oh, hi, yeah, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. Yeah." And if you actually take a moment to say, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm having a hard day today. No, I'm a little bit miserable today. Today's rough." It can make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. It makes people squirm. It doesn't feel good to people to hear that other people are having a hard day and a hard time. And so we don't share how we're really feeling sometimes. And there are stories that I hear about people who leave this world prematurely, who make the choice to stop, and you always hear they were fine, they were happy, they looked good, they didn't have anything negative going on that I knew of. They were always smiling, they were always telling people about how good they were. We don't talk about how we're really feeling. When people say, "How are you feeling?" you say, "Fine." You don't say anything else, you say, "Fine." And I wanna break that. So, I dare you to talk about how you're really feeling today. And I dare you to go out and show your vulnerability. And I dare you to take the time to talk about your symptoms. Take the time to talk about your mental health. Take the time to tell somebody, "Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit today." Take the time to tell people how you are really feeling. And maybe, just maybe, that can be one of the things that helps break the stigma against mental health. And one of those things that breaks the stigma against chronic illness and admitting that I'm not okay. Today, I'm having pseudo seizures. I've been having pseudo seizures for 48 hours. My speech is being affected, even though you probably can't tell very well. My memory is being affected. My body is being affected. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. I'm going to cry. That's how I'm really feeling today. I'm frustrated. That's how I'm really feeling today. I'm scared. That's how I'm really feeling today. And as much as I want to strive to bring positivity into your day, and as much as I hope that I do bring some positivity to your day today by just being here and existing and sharing with you guys the struggles and letting you guys know that it's okay to have the struggles, today is a day that I'm not okay. And that's okay. So, thank you for joining me on this episode of Dare to Talk. And leave in the comments whether or not you're okay today. Leave in the comments something that may be frustrating you in your life, something that you want to talk about. I read all of my comments. I look at all of my comments. I strive to make sure that my comment section is a safe place for everybody. And I wish that people would share positive things and be respectful of one another in my comments. If you are not respectful in my comments, I will probably just remove you. I have already had to do that a couple of times for people not being respectful, because I want this to be a safe place. Safe place, lots of respect, lots of love, and lots of care. So leave in your comments your struggles. Leave in the comments what you wish that was different in your life. Tell me how you're really feeling today. And I will hopefully see you guys next week with a lesson on coping strategies and when they are not healthy. I'm Dare. Thank you for joining me on Dare to Talk, and I dare you to talk about how you're really feeling today.